Hi everyone. Day one. I'm here with my insights for day one. So occasionally as I speak, you would notice my eyes dart in this direction. Is because my notes are here, so bear with me. So jumping right into it. Excuse me. Number one, when God said in Genesis 2 verses 18, it is not good for man to be alone. I will make for him a helper suitable for him. It was the first time in the creation account that God would declare something not good. Prior to that, everything had been declared good or very good. I'm talking about the land, sea, light, animals, humans. So this statement stood out. And it would be wise for us to briefly explore why God would say that it is not good for man to be alone and what precedence or divine purpose might have informed that declaration. And I believe there are 5. Number one, God is a relational being and man was made in God's image. Genesis 1 verse 26 says, let us make man in our image. Emphasis on the word us and our. The plural language is widely understood to be referring to God's Trinity nature, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, who coexist externally in perfect community and relationship. So when God made man in his image, that image included relationality, interdependence, and a shared purpose of communion. So when Adam stood alone in the garden, he bore God's image, but not fully. The relational aspect of that image was incomplete in a solitary man. So for the image of man to be fully reflected on the earth, there was a need for another with whom he could relate deeply, hence Eve. Number 2, man was given a mandate that required partnership. So Genesis 1 verses 28 says, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over fish, bird, and every living thing. Now, Adam alone could not reproduce. He could not multiply God's image. He could not exercise collaborative dominion. The fullness of this mandate required 2, not 1. So the creation of Eve wasn't just romantic or emotional. I believe it was really strategic for God's kingdom agenda on the earth. So, and we will notice that God's command often involves some sort of partnership. We're talking of Moses and Aaron, Jonathan and David, Paul and Timothy, Jesus and the 12. God's agenda thrives in relationship. Number 3, reason. Solitude was not sufficient for flourishing. Now, even though Adam was in the presence of God, had purposeful work, naming animals, tending Eden, was in a perfect environment, God still said it was not good. Why? Because there are dimensions of being human that are awakened only when we have human-to-human relationship. We're talking of vulnerability, shared purpose, growth through differences, emotional connection, mutual refinement. There is no amount of animals, work, or even divine encounters that can replace the transformative power of human relationship. And this is profound because it tells us that God himself honors the roles of human relationship, not as a replacement for him, but as an extension of his design. Number 4 reason why I think God said it was not good for man to be alone. Loneliness hinders mission. So aloneness is not just about solitude, it's about incompleteness. Loneliness isn't just about emotional pain or a lack of synergy or collaborativeness. One person cannot sharpen themselves because Proverbs says that iron sharpens iron. One person cannot fully bear witness. One person cannot walk the journey alone without weariness. In God's kingdom agenda, mission thrives in community. Which is why you will see that even Jesus sent his disciples out in 2s. The early church was really formed on intentional fellowships, and Paul wrote letters to the churches, not to Christians. That's number 4. And the last one is to reveal the mystery of Christ and the church. In Ephesians, Paul reflects, Ephesians 5:31-32. Paul reflects on the Genesis story of man, calling it a mystery, and it says that this is a profound mystery. What I am talking about, Christ and the church. From the beginning, God was painting a perfect picture of divine partnership the creation of Eve from Adam's side symbolized the birth of Christ, no, the birth of the church from Christ, and the union between them mirrors God's eternal desire to commune with his people. So Adam and Eve weren't just created for each other, but to act as a living metaphor for God's cosmic redemptive plan. So that was really remarkable for me, because it is not good for man to be alone. And many of us just think that God just looked at Adam and thought, this man is lonely. This thing is not good though. I don't like it. It really wasn't about loneliness or him being alone. There were a lot of things. There was the mandate, there was God's kingdom agenda, there was, the coming of Christ, and all these things were in line. And God saw the big picture and was like, no, this is not yet as I want it to be, as it is. It should be in my mind. This is not a reflection of me fully, and that is actually why he said it wasn't good. My second insight, this particular one is interesting. So I had figured that the time lapse between when God formed Adam and Eve was a long time. I thought, because as I read it, I was like, this must have been a long time, because why did I assume that? Because reading from Genesis 2:19 to 23, the Bible begins to explain that after the forming of Adam, God began to bring all the animals to Adam to name. Now in Genesis 2:20, it says, so the man gave names to all the livestock, the birds of the sky, and all the animals, all the wild animals. But for Adam, no suitable helper was found. Now I'm thinking, that is a lot of animals to name. Do you get? And I'm like, that must not have taken a few days. And I was like, then God saw that, and God was like, you know what? Let me make Eve. So I thought, that must have taken a time lapse. So I shared it in our small community, the small community of those who are also in this challenge. And two of my sisters, disagreed and said, you know what? I actually thought that this happened in such a short time. They were of the opinion that this actually happened. Adam and Eve, their creation, happened in such a short time. As a matter of fact, the same day. And I was like, I don't think so. But one of them said something that was very profound, and I'm going to read it out. And she said, the reason why she feels that it happened in such a short time, as a matter of fact, probably even the same day, she said, since Adam had not yet fallen, he was not yet in his fallen state, his mind carried the full weight of God's image, sharp and creative. So when he was naming the animals, it was flowing out of him the same way God called things into being. She said, I don't see him sitting under a tree, going through them one by one like he was taking attendance. He must have seen them, discerned them, and named them. Do you get? And she says, so I want to believe naming the animals and the creation of Eve would have possibly happened the same way. And she said Genesis 1 says, male and female created them, and Genesis 2 just showed us the process in slow motion. And I was like, wow, that is profound. That is profound. I don't know if any other person caught this. When you read this chapter and you read, the Adam, Eve, and all that, what did you perceive as you read that? I really would like to get your opinions. But that what they shared actually gave me like, oh, it's true. Because in my mind, I'm like, Adam is like, how many have I named today? Okay, 20. Tomorrow we go again. Do you get? So this is the beauty of reading, not just studying the word or reading the word, but doing it in the midst of a community of others who are also sharing insights and are dropping light, and they are seeing things and you're asking questions. It's just beautiful. Number 3, I honestly believe that God warns us about the impending dangers of sin or the state of our hearts before we get there. The state of our heart is actually what really makes us stand or fall when it comes to temptation and sin. Now, God warned Cain. God was like, guy, your heart is not in the right place, and you are heading into dangerous sin. And this is what God said to him. He said, but if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. Does this particular thing sound familiar? It sounds familiar to me. When Jesus was telling, it sounds like what Jesus told one of the disciples, when we get there, you see, it actually kind of, I was like, this actually sounds familiar. So God warned him, and Baba still didn't hear. As a matter of fact, killed his brother. God, laying the punishment before him and shouting, this punishment is too much for me to bear. I'm like, oh God, you just keep person. Like, you literally just killed someone and you're like, this thing is too much for me compared to a life. Do you see? But I do believe, and that's the work of the Holy Spirit in us right now, that we'll always have a nudging. He might not be God like he has told, audibly, like he told Cain, don't do this. But yeah, you actually have that check in your spirit before it becomes, something like, check your heart. This is going to happen, or you're heading into this direction before destruction. Number 4. Now, this is particularly to the teens and the youth that are, and let me not even assume that it's just them that are doing this challenge with us. Adam and Eve did not have 3 kids. I've always known this, but when I was reading it again, I think it's fair that I just share it again, because I noticed that when you ask them, name the kids of Adam and Eve, they would always say Cain, Abel, and his brother. And his brother Seth. The Bible actually says in Genesis 5 verses 3, if you see it, that Adam and Eve had not just unnamed daughters, but they also had unnamed sons. I know many people tend to catch it when they are trying to argue the who did Cain marry argument, that we know that Adam and Eve had daughters, but I think we tend to skip over the fact that they did have other sons that were not named outside of the 3 that we all know. Like I've said, this particularly is for my teenagers, excuse me, and for my youths. Yes. Number 5. Eve's first name was woman, not Eve. It wasn't until Genesis 20 that she was actually named Eve. Her name was woman. It was woman. That actually was her name. And even both times that she was actually called Eve, it was Adam who named her and called her that. It was not God. God never called her Eve. I noticed that. 6. God didn't give humans permission to eat animals until after the flood. I mean, many of us know that, but I just thought it was needful to say it again. So prior to the flood, it seemed that they were all on vegetarian diet. So Genesis, you can get that from Genesis 9 verses 3. It wasn't until that time that God was like, okay, now you can eat animals. But by far, the biggest revelation for me was in Genesis 11, aside from the first one that I shared. And it was the incident at Babel. So God confusing man's language at Babel wasn't just a consequence of their prideful actions. It went deeper and it was twofold. Now in Genesis 11 verses 4, I'll read it. And it said, then they said, come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the earth. Now, the first part of that question was bad enough, but you see the latter part, that was even deeper and worse. Now, the 2 mistakes that I see there, or the 2 terrible statements that were made there was, let us make a name for ourselves, otherwise we will be scattered over the earth. Let us make a name for ourselves was prideful. These people got to a point and said, you know what? Let us make a name for ourselves, not God. Us now, let us who have reached this is us, let us do something for ourselves. That was pride. And God resists the proud. The second part, which is even deeper and very, very important, that singular statement, otherwise will be scattered over the face of the earth, would have been in total contradiction to God's dominion mandate. What's the dominion mandate? We know it. Be fruitful, increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. God was so particular about this commandment and this dominion mandate, fill the earth, that between Genesis 1 and Genesis 11, where this Babel incident happened, God had repeated this particular instruction 5 times. He said it in Genesis 1:22, Genesis 1:28, Genesis 1:8, Genesis 8:17, Genesis 9:1, Genesis 9:7, and he would even go ahead to mention it at numerous times throughout Genesis, the end of Genesis. So they did not want to spread on the earth. While their actions were very prideful and self-glorifying, God saw a bigger issue. And the bigger issue was that this was anti-covenant. This was anti the dominion mandate. So God said in Genesis 11:8-9, so the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it is called Babel, because the Lord confused their language on the earth. From there, the Lord scattered them over the face of the earth. Do you see? I'm sure God was like, you don't want to what? You don't want to scatter. You will scatter. Oh, you don't want to. Do you get? And if you now look at it deeply from the perspective of God, I actually even feel it was an act of mercy. God wanted this big picture for man. God wanted, man had already fallen. And God was seeing the bigger picture. He needed man to take dominion of this earth. Do you get? And here was man deciding that I don't want to. It's a case of God sees good that is supposed to come to you. You are being stubborn, and he's literally dragging you by the leg. Like, you don't want it. Me, I want you to have it. Do you see? So if you look at it from God's lens, you could actually even see that it actually was an act of mercy. So Babel was a place where people babbled. Do you understand? So I believe that when I caught that insight, I was like, oh, this is beautiful. Because many times when people are reading the Bible, it's just as if, people were doing this magnificent thing, and then there was one jealous God all upstairs that was just angry. Oh, these people, if they put their mind to something, they would do it like it was. Most times, people make it sound, I've listened to many people's, should I say, recounting of that Bible story. It makes it sound like God was just this petty God who could not stand man doing something that was great. And I totally disagree. There had been an instruction, there had been mandates that were already being said continuously, and then man got to a point. He had not even reached, I don't even know how far they had traveled from Adam till then. So you would know that they had not scratched the surface of the earth. And someone got someone and saying, you know what, I think this is fine, we're good here. And God was like, no, that's not what I instructed you to do. That's not the big picture I have for you. Do you get? And so he had to do what he had to do. And so these are one of the major, and the last insight I had was about Lot. And it was that Lot did not manage his relationship with Adam very well. And I don't think he did. And it's not just about the quarrel, but there was also character. There was also, I think, character issues there. So when Abraham was saying to Lot, let there not be quarrel between you and me, and between my herdsmen and your herdsmen, it actually means that it wasn't just Abraham's herdsmen that were having issues with Lot's herdsmen. It actually shows that even Lot was having quarrel with Abraham because of that statement. Because Abraham first said, let us not have quarrel between me and you, before now saying, and also between the herdsmen. So it means that there must have been fracas there already between the two of them. They had the opportunity, the herdsmen, had the opportunity to have worked together, because they were in an hostile environment, and I can imagine that the neighboring people or the nations that were around would not have been very happy with the amount of work that they were amassing. So it would have been good for them to band together, but they did it that way. And Lot's character is also revealed by his choice. He took the best share of the land, even though it meant living near Sodom, a city that was known for sin and depravity. Lot still chose the area near Sodom, knowing as at that time what Sodom was. It really, looking at it, tells quite a lot about his character. So I hope that you have gotten or learned some from this insight. Please do share yours. I would love to hear.